This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA's hot and heavy. And just when we think that there's some kind of calm before the storm, oh my goodness, Hurricane Category 8 down in Miami. Things could not be more shook up than the move heard around South Florida. And so I know there is one person in particular who is ready to kind of chime in, kind of measure out, kind of gauge everything. He's our doppel interpreter hanging around down there in South Florida. You know him. He is my brother from another mother, my man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. www.shawsports.net, one of the illest sites for you to check out regarding sports, specifically the NBA. What's going on, Mr. Shaw? What's the tone? What's the setting like? Is this something similar to Hurricane Andrew, bro?
It is, man. Salute to all the fans, listeners of NBA Baseline. And I want to give a special shout out to a longtime supporter of us. And this show kind of goes out to him to some degree because his team is now getting D Wade, as you alluded to there. CBE Fred on Twitter follows us, supports us so much. Definitely wanted to shout him out. But down here in South Florida area, it really is an amazing whirlwind of emotions. You know, some people are like, hey, you know what, it needed to happen. Some people are very, very distraught, calling away the trader, et cetera, et cetera. But that's, some of the conversation we'll get into. And whether or not this was even a good move for Chicago to begin with. So lots to get into, man. But yeah, D Wade moving really was categorically catastrophic for a lot of people here in South Florida.
I'm talking about moving mountains and molehills and houses, projects. It's just like Carroll City probably all shook up right now. Trick Daddy probably trying to resurrect Slip and Slide Records, going to have to bring it back in order to keep Miami safe and calm again, man, after those news. And so we'll definitely be discussing, that'll be the heart of our breakdown discussion, is the move by Dwayne Wade. He is now returning back to Chicago, his home place, his homeland. And what does that mean for the Miami Heat? Pat Riley, was this arrogance that we're seeing, or was this actually a calculated move? Was this something that was in the making? We'll break it all down, and that'll be the heart of our discussion. And we'll also get into the Summer League in our segment of The Drop, giving our first impressions, who's been standing out in the spotlight, and what are the expectations from what we've already seen so far from the Orlando, Utah, and the Las Vegas Summer League. And then, of course, we got to cover the coast to coast, where we give you the news that's happening in the association. Once again, we'd like to thank everybody who continues to love and support the Baseline NBA podcast. We continually do this, not just for us, but we do it for you. We love the game. We hope you guys do too. Be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. And we always encourage you to get at the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Available on all the major platforms, available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn, and Player FM. Also available on Google Music. And then we are also available on my boy Shaw's channel on Roku. So all our Roku peoples, go to the marketplace, download Shaw Sports, and you will capture the latest episodes of the Baseline NBA podcast. Shaw, I know that we are making headway as we continually build up the brand of the Baseline NBA podcast. We've been doing this thing for years, but it's always great when we're able to kind of broaden our horizons, so to speak. So, we always got to make sure that we give incentives for people to tune into the Baseline NBA podcast. And one of those big incentives is for the fan in you who love to watch, play, participate the game of basketball. So what are we talking about here, Shaw?
What we're talking about here, my dude, is our new partner, Fan Essentials. So how would you like to get all of your favorite NBA teams' merchandise delivered straight to your doorstep? Check out fanessentials.net. All you got to do is subscribe and pick your team, and every month you'll get your team's gear shipped right to your doorstep, man. They find the sports gear so you don't have to. Each fan box comes packed with full of some amazing gear, bro. It makes a great gift idea for any sports fan. Prices start at just $14.99 and go up to $34.99. Visit fanessentials.net and use promo code BASELINE at the checkout for 30% off of your first month at Fan Essentials. Again, visit fanessentials.net to get all the essentials you need, bro.
Definitely. And so, especially for all those Sixers fans out there who are loving Ben Simmons, this might be a good incentive for you guys to hop on the Fan Essentials gravy train and start getting your gear ready for an exciting season of NBA basketball coming up. So you know how we like to do. You know how we roll. It is time now for the breakdown. Time to break it
I breaks it down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And Shaw, before we get into the juxt of our show, which clearly is all about Dwayne Wade and his decision to go to the Chicago Bulls, leaving the Miami Heat after 13 seasons, I got to give a big shout out to Serena Williams. This girl is off the meter, okay? 22 Grand Slam major titles. She captures Wimbledon, I believe, for the 7th time. Let me tell you something, and I've been saying this all weekend long. And I say this because in the context of when we talk about great sports athletes, we admire the things great athletes do, like Michael Jordan, what LeBron James did in capturing the first title for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we talk about athletes, and we always seem to separate the gender, male and female. There is no greater, more dominant athlete right now. I mean, we have to put her in that conversation as being one of the greatest and most dominant athletes of a sport when it comes to Serena Williams. And I got to give her a big shout out for finally getting over the hump and capturing number 22, tying Steffi Graf's record for the most Grand Slam titles in the Open era.
And she's a beast. There's no two ways about it. I think Serena is definitely one of everybody's favorites out there. There's not too many negative things said about her on a general basis. You know, she works hard, she puts in the time, and she goes out there and she dominates and she gets it done. Winning Wimbledon again, and then going out, I think, like it seemed to me like hours later, and capturing the doubles title with her sister Venus. So Serena Williams is definitely one of our favorites, and just in terms of sports figures in general, and we'll definitely be supporting her moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing as well too, because in the heat of everything that has happened over the last couple of weeks with regards to America and the tragedies that have taken place, I just think it's great when there are athletes who are doing things within their context to bring more positivity that sheds a better light than the cultural divisiveness that has taken place. So I just wanted to make sure we put that out there before we get into something that seems a little bit more divisive when we talk about sports regarding Dwayne Wade. Big shout out to Serena Williams for that great accomplishment. And trust me, she is not done by any means. All right, Shaw, so let's get right into it, man. Dwayne Wade, I mean, listen, we thought that the NBA was going to go through a heart attack before we even get out of Summer League because of the announcement by Kevin Durant leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder to go to the Golden State Warriors. Leave it to Dwayne Wade, man, to give us some more shock value. I mean, it's so much so that I think Brian Windhorst probably dropped like 10 pounds, you know what I'm saying, just going over the sweat of trying to get all the facts together, figuring out what happened here. You know, Chris Broussard started to look like, you know what I'm saying, like he'd been hanging out in the Bahamas trying to figure out what's happening. It's too hot and heavy with everything that has happened over the last 72 hours regarding Dwayne Wade's announcement that he's leaving the Miami Heat and he is signing with the Chicago Bulls. And even Jim Paxson and the general manager almost didn't know what to do with themselves because they still needed to make moves to open up salary to get Dwayne Wade to complete the deal. So it's, I mean, everything just felt like, man, either it was a rush job waiting to happen, or this was something that was bound to happen and we just needed to be prepared for it, which clearly the Miami area certainly isn't. The Chicago fans certainly wasn't. And the NBA fans just, I don't know if they'll ever be prepared to see Dwayne Wade in another jersey that wasn't Miami Heat.
Yeah, I'm going to preface things here a little bit with, some optimism, but still some concern. Wade made some comments over the weekend as we record this show that really shows he's really regretful of having to leave Miami based on a business decision, based on, some of the things that I guess within the organization he didn't feel was right, not being taken care of, for the legacy of the 13 years that he provided to the Miami Heat, Pat Riley and Mickey Harrison. But his comments have me a little concerned if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, it's just because he doesn't seem like a guy who really wanted to leave. And I don't know how that's going to play out for him moving into Chicago. I think, again, he's a professional. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and there are some good things that can come of it. But even the Chicago Tribune, I think it was, they put out an AARP reference to Wade when signing him. So not everybody seems to be on board with the signing in general. But taking it from the Miami standpoint, this just is a situation that turned bad. It turned sour really, really awkwardly and quickly. And to me, I was surprised the Bulls got into this race, if you will, because all reports are saying the Bulls didn't even get to meet with him in New York, where he was hosting his meetings. Milwaukee had a 2-hour meeting or so, and Chris Middleton and guys like that were recruiting him. And if there was going to be anywhere, it might have been there because he played ball at Marquette. Denver was in the running too, trying to offer them the most amount of money they could potentially have. But nobody wanted to offer him a third year. He took a little less money, I guess, to go back to Chicago. He's a lot of work going on with his foundation in that area. But a lot of Heat fans are distraught, while some of them, I guess, some of those who think they're consider themselves to be a little bit more savvy are like, well, from a business standpoint, this was the right move.
Yeah, I'm a little mixed by this because this has not been the first time that Dwayne Wade has sacrificed for the Miami Heat. And look, we've seen a lot of varying reports. Oh, well, Dwayne Wade didn't have to make these type of sacrifices. Dwayne Wade wanted to make these sacrifices. Spin it the way that you want to spin it, okay? The bottom line is this. Dwayne Wade played for the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, as a professional basketball team, their goal was to go out and try to win, okay? Now, let me ask you this question, Shaw. What if the Miami Heat won 4 straight championships? Would what Dwayne Wade has done and the sacrifices have being made as they were, would there be more of an acrimonious feel to the management not handling Dwayne Wade correctly over these last 3 years? Because I just feel like it just seems so convenient because the Miami Heat haven't won since LeBron James has left, that it just seems to be like, oh, well, we knew we were getting to this point and is probably the best thing to do. I don't know if it's about whether or not it was the best thing to do as much as it should be as an organization, the right thing to do.
Well, I think championships breed the idea that you always have to bring that team back, especially core pieces like Wade would have been. And again, this is obviously assuming LeBron would have stayed. If they do that, then yeah, there's no question Wade gets his money. They just continue to make the
But
moves.
Shaw, wasn't Pat Riley one of the reasons why LeBron James just really didn't want to stay? Like, I'm not saying that he was the direct reason. I'm just saying because LeBron didn't have, quote unquote, as much negotiating wiggle room, so to speak, for his demands, that it made it easier for him to leave to go back to Cleveland, right?
Right, you're right, and I don't think Wade has ever had that problem with when it comes to Riley or Harrison or whatever the case may be. Again, they have a whole culture that they try to shove down people's throats, if you will, especially if you live in this area, like, oh, Heat life or Heat culture, etc. And to some degree, that is true. But I just feel like with Wade specifically, this turned into a situation where Riley came out and point blank said that Whiteside was their priority in free agency. Then they pursued Kevin Durant in a failed pursuit that I don't think a lot of people thought had a lot of real traction to begin with. And then they're like, all right, well, we didn't get him. All right, D Wade, what's up? We'll throw you 25 million or 20 million, whatever the deal was. And that really just kind of didn't sit well with him because he said he's a legacy down here in South Florida. He is a lifer or was a lifer. And to get just looked over when it came to free agency. And my thing was, even if Riley was like, listen, you know what, even if that's what his thought was to bring back Whiteside first, if that was his first initial priority, I don't think he needed to verbalize it, when in closing press conference.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, bro.
Yeah, that could have been like, hey, you know what, we want to bring our core guys back, and you could have left it at that. And if someone said the core guys, well, who are our core guys? You say, hey, Wade, Whiteside, you name all those people. But he point blank said, Whiteside is our priority, which put Wade proverbially on a back burner, and I think that's that bad.
Shaw, let me ask you this question, though, and this is no disrespect to Hassan Whiteside, because I think it's his time, okay? He has certainly done the things necessary to make him an attractive free agent coming into this season, and if you are the Miami Heat and you basically raised that talent to allow that to go, I think it would look very bad on the Miami Heat, regardless of what they do to keep Dwayne Wade. However, doesn't it just kind of feel like, even with Pat Riley verbalizing that he wanted to make Hassan Whiteside a priority, that I still feel like there's some things not right between Dwayne Wade and Hassan Whiteside that would have attributed to this? Because I had heard that there was some reports that the flow between Wade and Whiteside wasn't completely there, especially to the second half of this season and given some of the injuries. And maybe that in itself also attributed to Dwayne Wade's kind of, visceral, feelings towards how the organization looked at him, and looked at what the plans are supposed to be moving forward for the future. Even if the thought process was, hey, I want to go ahead and I'll make the sacrifice again. Just don't rub it in my face like it's something I'm expected to do just because I'm an older player, and that's how it should be. I know he's looking for the Jeter Bryant treatment, and I think that the Miami Heat could have at least kind of wedged themselves somewhere in the middle of that, not going ridiculous on the side of how the Lakers did, but certainly to a level or degree that is more suitable for what Wade has been able to do, given that he is the most popular South Florida figure, period, in all of the sports that goes on down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I mean, and I think that's a great point, to end off on when it comes to that. Wade really surpassed guys like Dan Marino and, all the other Miami greats that were down here. And now you kind of wonder from a South Florida standpoint, okay, well, who is that guy that you really look to as, Whiteside? I don't think it's ready to carry that mantle, especially in the way that Wade did within the community as well. And Wade still said he's going to continue a lot of his work in South Florida and continue to do a lot of great things for kids and youth on a regular basis, but more so probably in the summertime, in the off season, because he can't be here physically on a regular day basis. So, but if there was any tension between he and Whiteside, I don't know if it was something that was real and palpable, because on the court, Wade was one of the guys who really made Whiteside better. I mean, I just remember looking all the time saying, how does he continue to find him? He force-fed Whiteside the ball in close quarters sometimes on odd angles, and making sure he fed him the ball on alley-oops and things like that. Wade was a big Whiteside supporter, especially on the court. So I don't know if there's anything that led to that, that dissension or to Wade leaving, outside of the fact that Riley made Whiteside more of a priority.
I will say this though, Shaw. I will say this, and maybe this is something that if you're Hassan Whiteside, you understand this moving forward, as a player and being a part of this league, especially now what might potentially happen with the upcoming CBA, and if both sides opt out. If you are Hassan Whiteside and you are in the juxt of something like this, you better make sure that you're advocating for players. Like in a situation like that, I understand he's got to get paid and he's got to take care of himself. I don't think that would have been a problem. I don't think that would have been an issue. And I don't think Hassan Whiteside would have had a problem finding and taking his talents elsewhere because someone's going to pay him the money. But when you recognize that your team that was basically one game away from playing in the Eastern Conference Finals, when you have had opportunities and you're playing next to one of the great players in the NBA, that being Dwayne Wade, if you believe that this is where you need to be, you make sure that you take care of the guys that got you there. And I felt like as Hassan Whiteside, as a player, it's not like he has to, but I think that it's something that you have to think about. He needs to step up and say something, say, look, we need to make sure that we keep this core intact. And I understand that he said, I'm willing to take less money, but I think it's a little bit more than just saying about taking less money. He should basically put the pressure back on the organization to do what's necessary to keep this group that took them this far, if he felt comfortable in doing. That's the only reason why I felt like maybe there's something questionable there. Not saying that there's bad blood between Wade and Hassan. I just don't know whether or not Hassan completely cared one way or the other if the Heat was going to properly take care of Dwayne Wade, and if the expectations were, if I'm priority number one, make sure priorities 2, 3, and 4 are getting taken care of correctly, so it doesn't look like it's going to be all on me. Because now if you think about it, Shaw, this money that is being given to Hassan Whiteside, it's going to be the Chris Bosh effect, because it's the same thing that happened after LeBron James left. They prioritized Chris Bosh and not Dwayne Wade, and all the pressure now was on Chris Bosh being that guy prior to him having those blood clots. So be rest assured, Miami's going to do the same thing to Hassan Whiteside now that Dwayne Wade is not even no longer a calamity, so to speak, when it comes to this type of thing.
Yeah, well, there's a trickle-down effect for Miami.
Or scapegoat, I meant to say. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but trickle-down effect for the Heat as a result, because Wade's cap space now is completely open. So they've gone out and made moves. They've signed James Johnson from Toronto, Wayne Ellington from Brooklyn, re-upped on Udonis Haslem, and now as we record the show and trying to trying to acquire Luke Babbitt from the Pelicans. And then there's a big question in whether or not they're going to re-up and match the offer for Tyler Johnson, which as we record is seeming like something that they're going to do. So they're going to become this, hustle team, if you will, of, NBA guys who've kind of been journeymen throughout their time in the league, along with Whiteside, and then hopefully that they get Chris Bosh back as well too, to kind of make things and bolster the rest of this roster. It'll be really interesting to see what Riley does to fill it all out, because they have a lot of guys who have left, and now they're welcoming a lot of new guys who we don't really know how they'll play under Spoelstra. But that said, the Bulls get a future Hall of Famer. So what are your thoughts on Wade actually going to Chicago and fitting into the Fred Hoiberg system?
Oh, man. Rondo, Wade, and Butler. Wow. And I'm not saying that wow like it's supposed to be like something I'm admiring or how. Like this is probably going to be the most complicated NBA equation to try and solve, because as much as I admire the savvy and the guile of Rajon Rondo, as much as I admire the grit and the crash in Dwayne Wade, and really the future of the franchise, as everyone keeps saying, it's Jimmy Butler. And this guy, he's a banger, he's a hustler, he's a guy that like he earns his keep. I don't know how they're going to effectively shoot this basketball, man. I'm finding unless Taj Gibson turns into Draymond Green, I don't know how this team is going to shoot the basketball effectively, even with Fred Hoiberg as their head coach.
Yeah, they have some issues there, and it just seems to be contrary to everything that they want to do from a spacing standpoint and running up and down the floor. Rondo and Wade and Butler, you just don't know how that's going to mesh. Gibson projects as probably the starting four, or maybe Mirotic steps in there to actually give them some shooting on a regular basis, and then you're bringing Gibson and Portis off the bench. Lopez is a big bruiser at the center. Again, obviously he's not running up and down. They have no real backup center currently on this roster, so they'll definitely be looking to acquire whatever's left in free agency, or maybe through a trade, or maybe even the D League as Summer League kind of rolls through here. But I'm very concerned about what they're going to be able to do from a shooting standpoint. But that said, Rondo and Wade are two extremely competitive guys alongside Jimmy Butler, who's another ultra competitive guy too. So they may really just be able to, and for lack of a better phrase, and this isn't obviously a basketball analytical term, but really hustle and hard their way into a lot of wins, because they're just going to be so good at just willing things and driving to the rim and creating contact and getting to the line. Obviously not so much Rondo with his free throw shooting, but I think the Wade and Butler combination can be very, very good. And Wade still has a little bit of physicality where he can play defense at times. Again, obviously he's not the same guard he was 4 years ago when it comes to that. But I definitely feel like it's maybe a little bit overblown about what their record will be, but the spacing is definitely something that they're going to have to address, because they moved a guy in Dunleavy who to acquire Wade to be able to help them space the floor a little bit. So now their best shooters really become Mirotic and Doug McDermott on the roster.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA as we covered the breakdown, the news of Dwayne Wade leaving the Miami Heat to play for the Chicago Bulls. And so now, what do we make of the Chicago Bulls team? And that's where we're kind of getting to at. Look, Shaw, I completely agree with you. Listen, if you're telling me you're going to replace Dwayne Wade in that lineup, then having a Mike Dunleavy, I think that you have definitely upgraded your play creating and your playmaking abilities by having him on that team. My only concern is, and again, one of the things that I don't think we give enough credit for sometimes, and I know you know me, I'm not always I'm a coacher, right? I love when coaches do things effectively. Eric Spoelstra really did a fantabulous job being able to manage Dwayne Wade and using him so that he can be effective and give himself this opportunity, to pull, quote unquote, the blasphemous move of saying, screw Miami, I'm going to take my talents to Chicago. I just wonder about Fred Hoiberg. A lot has been questioned about Fred Hoiberg and his ability to coach. He had a talented team last year, a team in many people's opinions should have made the playoffs. And I don't know where they're going to address that need, but clearly they're going to need to put somebody back there. They gave up Justin Holiday, and I think this is to me where the trade for Derrick Rose I felt was better for the Knicks, because you add that Justin Holiday piece in there. And if the New York Knicks do not use this kid, shame on the New York Knicks. But if you're the Chicago Bulls and you could foresee that you had an opportunity to get Dwayne Wade, knowing that you have a guy like Justin Holiday to probably back up Wade, I mean, that's a quality player who can come in, learn from some great players around him, and really be an effective player himself. That to me is going to be the big question. Who is going to come in and relieve some of those minutes that Fred Hoiberg had the luxury of having with this team last year that he didn't use effectively with the bench guys that he had? Well, who is he going to put in there that's going to be effective to maintain that level of play that we're talking about could potentially be good enough to be a competitive basketball team for this upcoming season?
Well, look at you with the holiday love. I mean, I think that's very nice.
Hey, man, and it's not even Christmas yet, and I'm already handing out presents.
That's what's up. But I think when you talk about, the love there, I think that goes to Denzel Valentine who's going to have to try to fill that role, if you will, as a rookie, but as a skilled rookie who I thought was a little bit underrated in this year's draft, a guy who can do a little bit of everything and is, could be a decent shooter in the NBA, not a knockdown guy, but definitely a guy who can hit some wide open stuff if the opportunity becomes available. I think Valentine is a guy who's going to spell Wade and spell Butler and a lot of those things, and can do, and learn a lot from, a future Hall of Famer and an All-Star in Butler. Valentine now probably is the biggest beneficiary of the acquisition of Wade and what the Chicago Bulls are doing, because he's just going to get so much better, so much faster by practicing and being around these guys on a regular basis. I think the Tony Snell experiment is something is done. They can offload that guy or try to get him for anything right now. I think they'd be happy to do that. But to me, I think it's Valentine and McDermott who are going to be the guys who play the most behind Wade and Butler.
Doug McBuckets. So is this the coming out party for Doug McBuckets, man? You know how long we've been talking about, we've been egging to try and throw that moniker out there, Doug McBuckets, when he's lighting it up, and he just does not get enough opportunity to do it. And you would have thought now that because Rose is gone, because Noah is gone, that this is an opportunity for Doug McBuckets to come out and shine. Now Dwayne Wade is coming home. I feel like the McBuckets party is going to be hanging out over McDonald's and not inside the United Center Arena, man.
Well, we'll definitely see. I mean, I had a chance to speak with McDermott earlier part of last season, and he's a guy who doesn't want to just be known as a shooter. So he's going to have an opportunity now he's got to be able to put the ball on the floor, get to the rim, and and pass it a little bit here and there. Obviously, he's not going to be dropping dimes out there in Chicago in the United Center, but nevertheless, he does need to be a better overall player, and that starts with defense too. And for him, he understands that. He does know that, and he doesn't want to just be this guy who was had a great college career and then kind of plays 3 or 4 years in the league and then flames out. I think he has the right mentality about it, and hopefully Hoiberg and those guys, and same thing, being around Wade, they get in his head, and he works to get better and to become a productive member of that team in that rotation.
All right, Shaw. So now you brought up the word defense, and I found this to be an interesting caveat here, because one of the things that we've often talked about, how the Chicago Bulls earned their keep, was a team of the 90s, and ultimately it came down to them playing defense. And you've got Rondo, you've got Wade. And Wade, I believe, is a really effective defender, even at this particular point of his career. And I don't think enough people give him credit for that. Rondo has lost a step. Clearly, you can see that, clearly because of the injuries. And I just think that the systems that he's played in has allowed him, a little credence to not give the same kind of effort that he would normally need to give, on the better defensive teams that he used to play for. But with that being said, bro, how good could this team be defensively? And, we keep this in mind because the competition is not going to be, it's definitely going to be amped up this year. I know the Pistons, they're a playoff team. They're going to be better. The Milwaukee Bucks, last year, abysmal. We know that this team can definitely play better than what they showed last year, okay? Indiana made some moves, and they are an effective basketball team. They've got a superstar player in Paul George. And, obviously we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So to me, I think the calling part could clearly be, like you were talking about, that hustle. That hustle has to equal to defensive effort and being a good defensive team, making teams difficult to shoot the basketball. Can we see that from the Chicago Bulls team?
I think to some degree, there has to be some reasonable expectations on this. I mean, can they be a top 5 defensive team in the NBA? I don't think so. Can they be, top 15? I think that's something that's reasonable. And I don't want people to get the misunderstanding here that, okay, well, if you're not a top 5 team defensively, that you're not a good defensive team. A lot of it is statistical and everything like that. I think they'll be able to do things where they play really, really well and tight, I think in spurts, maybe in close ends and stretches of games. I think the key to that is really going to be what they get out of Rondo at the point guard position, defending some of those guys, and what they get out of Jerian Grant coming off the bench, defending, backup point guards too. At the center position, Lopez, again, not a great shot blocker, but he's a shot deterrent, and he definitely stands people up in the post and does the right things. He has good defensive principles. He's a great guy. He's always talking. So he's Noah-like in that way, where he's going to be calling out screens and calling out, where people need to rotate on the defense. So there's some hope for them there. It's just that, with Wade, being a little bit older, Rondo taking that step back, you wonder a little bit, but I feel like they'll be a top 15 team, and Hoiberg understands that is really going to have to be where they make up for some of the things that they don't have when it comes to shooting.
Well, one thing is for certain, Shaw, their backcourt is certainly going to be making up the boatload of their offensive output for this upcoming season. Now that they don't have Paul Gasol, we'll get into that when we talk about our coast to coast. And it's going to be very interesting to see because we've been talking about how Taj Gibson has really been on the fence, for a few years now. We've been waiting for this guy to step up and be that dude. It tells you something when the Bulls went out and they got Paul Gasol, and Paul Gasol was their everything in that front court. And even when Paul Gasol was down in injury, Taj Gibson did not show up. So I'll be very interested to see if Taj Gibson lives up to the expectations that I think people have been clamoring for quite some time in Chicago, because ultimately I think the Bulls have had numerous opportunities to move that guy when he was at the peak of what he basically can do. I'm on the mindset that I think what you see is what you get now with Taj Gibson. And if there's nothing else now, by the Bulls going ahead and pulling this crazy move and getting Dwayne Wade, clearly the intent is they want their backcourt to be more formidable, their swing to be more formidable, and they'll worry about everything and everybody else moving down the line. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of The Baseline NBA podcast, and this week on The Drop, it's Summer League time, man. Definitely got to talk about the NBA Summer League. And it's been a while since we've had multiple Summer Leagues going on, in the sense that it's not just Vegas and it's not just Orlando. Even Utah had a Summer League, Shaw. And this is why right now it's a great time to be an NBA fan and to be someone who's watching the NBA. And if you are a rookie, it's a great time as well, too, because I don't know if whether or not a lot of these guys need additional work, additional opportunities, but there is definitely more opportunities for these guys, these first-round draft picks, second-round draft picks, these D-leaguers. There is, and international players as well, too, to showcase their talents on a bigger stage through the little window of the summer, before we start talking about OTAs and stuff like that. Before we start talking about this upcoming NBA season, some of these guys are being given numerous opportunities now that you add this additional summer league in there. And we're seeing that some guys are certainly taking advantage of it, and some guys looks like they're going to need a little bit more work. Don't know if they're going to have any more summer league games left to be able to do it, but they certainly going to need a little bit more work for them to make their presence felt in the NBA.
Yeah, Summer League provides everybody an opportunity to get better. It provides you an opportunity to potentially, make your D League impression or make your impression to go overseas. And if the NBA doesn't come calling immediately, but I think what everybody's most excited about is it's the first chance to see these rookies that got drafted and then take the court against their counterparts, if you will, and seeing the competitive nature that Summer League has definitely provided. I think in recent years it used to just kind of be a joke. Run around for 40 minutes, get some exercise, get a sweat, and it's nothing. But it really has become an entity that the NBA really does promote along with Samsung to really make sure that the fans get a great experience, but these players get the experience that they really need for themselves to get better and to get the exposure that they need on a regular basis. So I'm happy that Utah came back. I think Utah came back last year. It might have been the year before that. They took some time off. Orlando still does their thing as well, too, but Vegas is where it really is at, with the most amount of teams competing throughout the NBA.
Definitely. And listen, everybody, all eyes were on Ben Simmons. All eyes were on Brandon Ingram, the two top picks for the 2016 draft. And look, Ben Simmons in times did not disappoint. You can clearly see that when you're 6'10", and you can handle the rock, like Chris Paul, you could pass the basketball like LeBron James. And you've got athleticism for days, and you're not even 21 years old, that you really should be talked about a lot in the NBA before you play your first NBA game. But you can also clearly see the rawness in him, which is a little bit disturbing because he only spent 1 year in LSU. And everyone is talking about, well, you consider the players that he played around, the system that he played under. Listen, there was a reason why we talked about LeBron James, Shaw, before he even put on sneakers and walked into what wasn't then the Quicken Loans Arena at that time. And we saw what he was capable of. We saw that when he was coming out of high school, what this guy was capable of. The stuff that he was doing, the high schools weren't ready and the colleges wouldn't have been ready for what LeBron was bringing to the table. So we knew that the only place that he could find himself is the NBA. You can clearly see that the Philadelphia 76ers have some things to work on regarding Ben Simmons, and things that Ben Simmons is going to have to work on to earn the quote unquote accolades that have already been bestowed upon him before he even plays in the NBA.
I think there's some interesting points with that said. I think there was a lot of question of whether or not Philadelphia would, make a move to acquire a true point guard, if you will. And now there's some conversation that, maybe they can run Simmons out there and be the point. I think that would be a mistake, I think, in his first year to go ahead and try to have him do that, especially from a defensive standpoint, trying to guard other guys out there. Or maybe that's not what they mean. Maybe he will be LeBron-like, where he's controlling the basketball on a regular basis, just playing at the 3 and 4 position. And if that's what it is, then, that could potentially work. He has the passing skills, he has the acumen to get things done on that side of the floor. And I'm really impressed with what he's done so far in Summer League in a short amount of time.
But does he have the temperament, Shaw? I like what I'm saying is, when I saw LeBron James in high school on the ESPN games, and let's keep in mind too, ESPN would not touch any of these high school basketball games until the talk about LeBron James and who this guy was and what he's capable of doing and whether or not he should be coming into the NBA. None of that would have been relevant to the ESPN people covering basketball games unless LeBron James was there. So let's make sure we put that to kind of set the tone for what I'm asking. My question is, if you're making him the face of the franchise and you're putting him in that realm that he is going to be the face, and he's, there's going to be some level of leadership expectations. I'm asking you, seeing from what you've seen so far in these summer leagues, does he have that within him? Because that to me is the caveat why the Cleveland Cavaliers conveniently were able to be as successful as they were. You just saw it in LeBron James. He wants to be the man on the team. He commands that respect from the players in the locker room to the people that are giving out the tickets. Everybody knows that he's that dude. I don't know if I saw that with Simmons, and we're talking about this in a summer league basketball game. I still feel like he's still trying to feel his way out. And maybe that is the dichotomy that we look at when we separate the eras of where we're transitioning for the NBA and how we look at these franchise players from what the franchise players were back in the day.
Yeah, I think with Simmons, it's still very, very early in the process. Short answer is he a born leader? I don't know. I don't think so currently. Is that something that he can grow into? Most definitely. And I think that's why Philadelphia is trying to add a couple of the guys, veterans on the roster. I think they added a guy like Gerald Henderson the other day, who, again, is another great high character guy who can help Simmons along the way. And, all those young guys in Philadelphia are going to try to have to grow up together. He, Noel, Okafor, Saric coming over as well, too. They just drafted, 2 other wing guys as well. Simmons is going to have all the opportunity to be a leader on this roster, but I don't know how much of that they expect him to do on a regular basis immediately, given the state of their franchise and just kind of where they're at from a talent pool. He can definitely get there, and I think what we've seen so far in Summer League is a guy who has the talent, and I think more than anything else, he might be a little bit more concerned about the flash, a little bit more concerned about stat padding than he needs to be right now. And I'm not knocking him because he's a great talent. But I think from a leadership standpoint, yeah, he has a long way to go when it comes to that.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our segment of The Drop as we're talking about the NBA Summer League for 2016 and our impressions of the guys that are out there displaying their talents on the basketball court. So let's transition over to Brandon Ingram, Shaw. A lot of expectations on Brandon Ingram. They're saying that he is the face, and ultimately they're building around him. I find it interesting. 2 teams who have been struggling to quote unquote draft the face of their franchise in the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers have picked 2 very interesting guys that they are touting to do that, given the amount of talent that has already been drafted between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid, Jahlil Okafor, D'Angelo Russell, and Randall. And Larry Nance. Even though we're not saying Larry Nance was supposed to be the future of the franchise or anything like that, I'm just saying it's just interesting, like how they're still searching through these guys. What you've seen so far from Brandon Ingram, is he the future of the Los Angeles Lakers?
Yeah, the future, but the future isn't now. I think he's going to definitely get his touches, play, some plus minutes for the Lakers on a regular basis. Russell has been the guy who's been more and more impressive so far in a few summer league games that the Lakers have played since we've been recording. But Ingram definitely has shown flashes and signs of somebody who can take that. It's nice, and it's nice to see that he's taken on that. I think from other standpoints, because all the attention really does seem to be on Ingram, as well it should be, as because he is the flavor of the month, if you will, after Bishop being drafted number 2. And Russell is like, all right, well, cool. I can kind of go out here and do my thing. And he's played very, very well, alongside that. So I think that Laker team, they're all going to grow. And that kind of leads back to the other signings that they had. Getting a guy like Luol Deng to help Ingram, also same thing, help him mature and understand that, you know what, you don't need to go out here and score 25 a night in your rookie season. They're going to try to bring him along a little bit slowly so to make sure that they don't ruin a guy just simply because of all those expectations that are being placed upon.
So hasn't this been what it's really about for the Summer League, is these second-year players coming in and really kind of putting on a show? I mean, look at Larry Nance and listen, it's interesting. Even when we're watching the Las Vegas Summer League, it was all about Larry Nance. The Lakers fans and the Lakers constituents out there at the Summer League love them some Larry Nance. And he did not disappoint when the Lakers took on the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, he had a couple of dunks, but his overall effort and his hustle makes you wonder, now that Byron Scott is no longer the head coach, if you're Luke Walton, how do you not find time to get this guy on the basketball court and just let him do his thing? Because I really think he can be one of those energy guys that keeps people watching out there in Los Angeles as they go through that transition, and might taper a little bit of those expectations that they need this team to be successful in the next few years.
Yeah, Nance is, especially in that second game where they played against, Ben Simmons in Philadelphia, Nance really stole the show, really filled up the stat sheet and is going to be an energy guy that does so much for them on a regular basis. Again, the rotation is going to be something that Walton really has to figure out, balancing the young with the veteran guys that they paid a lot of money to have be there. So are those guys really just going to be expensive babysitters and caregivers, if you will, or are they expected to play plus minutes as well too? That to me, I think is going to be Walton's biggest challenge, I think, going into this upcoming season, because they do have some talent and they have all in some ways shown some flashes, if you will. So I'll be interested to see how they all develop. But talk about second year guys, even in Orlando Summer League, Cameron Payne, had a great time in Orlando, averaged almost 19 a game. In Utah, Trey Lyles, your boy, really did work, and even now has gone over to Vegas and is continuing to do a great job out there as well too. So to see him do his thing, I think it's huge for Utah, and everybody is talking about Utah as a potential top 4 or 5 seed in the Western Conference next season, which might be a little bit much, but if Lyles is going to be able to give them this type of production, maybe not. Kyle Anderson played really great for the San Antonio Spurs out in Utah too.
Again.
Yeah. So to me, I said Summer League really is kind of what you're saying there. It really kind of becomes about those second year guys as they really try to hone their skills and really show that they can do something. Terry Rozier from the Celtics had a great Summer League out in Utah.
And we were talking about him possibly being the odd man out, so to speak, when the Boston Celtics drafted Demetrius Jackson.
Right, yeah, and I don't think that's the case now. If you listen to the Celtics Twitter feeds and all things like that, Rozier seems to be the guy that will take Evan Turner's minutes, if you will, going into next season. Again, a long way to go before we get there, but based on some of the earlier impressions that we've had, Rozier just looks like somebody who's ready, to do his thing on a regular basis, getting the minutes. Boston, still trying to make some moves here and there, but if the roster stays as is, Rozier definitely seems to be that guy.
Definitely, and look, I'm going to ask you in a moment, Shaw, who else really has impressed you more than anything so far in the draft. I will want to listen, man, the Golden State Warriors, we talk about, organizations who have it. We always say the San Antonio Spurs, and we'll always talk about even the Boston Celtics. I mean, even in the down years, the Boston Celtics have always found a way to bounce back and be competitive really in a short amount of time. A lot of it comes down to when they do the draft, they draft their talent well, that they become relevant. And we watch because we're seeing these guys come of age. We did that back when Paul Pierce played in his era, and we're seeing that now with guys like Marcus Smart. And we're probably going to see that if Terry Rozier continues to pan out and do the things that he's been doing over the last couple of years. Patrick McCaw out of UNLV, man, he is going to be someone to look for. This guy looks really impressive. Clearly, he's got to put a little bit of meat on the bone. But, man, this guy is an offensive – he could be an offensive juggernaut without even blinking an eye. And if the Golden State Warriors, again, are going to be touted as being a great organization, it's because they're doing things like this.
Yeah, I mean, and they just know what they need to do, and they give guys the minutes that is appropriate for them, and they develop them, slowly, if you will. Same thing like the Spurs and other organizations like that too. So I like to see, guys like Hit McCraw go out there and do his thing. I like to see guys like, even Bembry from the Atlanta Hawks, he go out there, and not somebody that a lot of people are talking about, but I think he's got a good overall game. He's going out there and played well. Jordan McRae from the Cleveland Cavaliers, signed last minute, won an NBA championship as a result, and now is playing in the summer league team. And he's going out there and playing well too. So a lot of great games so far, early on in terms of the Las Vegas, Orlando, and Utah concluded. But I've been really impressed with a lot of the young guys out there, and somebody who I didn't expect to be impressed with as early. And everybody thought it was a mistake, and obviously it's summer league, so everything it needs to be with a caveat to some degree. But Thon Maker went out there and in his debut and in the second game has played very well. Been exactly what everybody thought he'd be. Extremely active, defensive, rebounding the ball, and doing the things that I think can really help that Milwaukee roster team. Just so much length, so much size on that roster. And Thon Maker looks like he's going to go out there and make an immediate impact when it comes to Milwaukee.
Who's been your disappointment so far in the summer league? Who hasn't really impressed you as much as you've had high expectations of them going out there doing their thing?
I think it's hard for me to say immediately, especially when it comes to the Vegas one, which I've been paying a little bit more attention to as we record the show, for the weekend. I'm not too sure that there's as far as a rookie, I don't know if there's anybody who hasn't really done what they needed to do. I think there's a couple of second-year guys or maybe even veteran guys. You're like, all right, well, why are they still kind of hanging around? You look at Jimmer Fredette, he's running around out there. I think there's what's his name? Bryce Cotton for the Atlanta Hawks. Again, he had a good game as we record the show today, but just another name. He's like, all right, well, what's really going to happen with them? Deontay Christmas, he's been running around, been on team after team after team. It's just like, when does that, kind of not really be the case for you anymore? Like, how many times are you going to come to summer league? I think from a rookie standpoint, maybe Dragan Bender in his initial debut, that first game, wasn't as good as I would have hoped to see, but he did show some flashes, especially being able to rebound and bring the ball up the floor, but wasn't able to shoot it effectively. So, I think, if we talk about it, Buddy Hield was another guy who didn't shoot all that well in his first game in summer league too. So, but definitely, I think as we matriculate and move through the Las Vegas one and kind of go back and look at Orlando and Utah, we would be able to find some more guys who probably didn't live up to it, and that's a very, very big problem. If you're not producing in summer league, then how the hell are you going to produce in the NBA?
No, most definitely. What were your thoughts so far about Jaylen Brownshaw? I mean, the quote-unquote risk pick by the Boston Celtics said number 3.
It seems to be a hustle guy. He's not going to be a great shooter. He's going to be a guy who's going to force his way to the rim, create contact. Hopefully he can shoot the free throw better than he's shown, I think. He's done okay at it, but he's shooting, I think, like a 60 or 70% clip. He needs to get that up. And it just obviously has to have a better jumper, but showing grit and grind, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, especially on the defensive side of things, and a real nose for the ball. So that part I think has been good. But I'm not I'm not as excited as I guess I would have liked to be as a Celtic fan. But looking at it from an analyst, definitely see some signs there as a guy who's definitely going to try hard, and that's all you can ask from a rookie, especially when somebody drafted as high as he was.
Most definitely. My apologies because we didn't give a shout out to Devin Booker. Oh my God, listen. Phoenix Suns, man.
No business even being in the summer league.
My God, it's just absolutely
no reason for him to be there.
I mean, listen, he's giving us great basketball to watch for the summer, though. I will say this much: he should be probably playing Team USA basketball the way he's scoring the basketball. Let's put it like that. But yeah. I gotta tell you, man, Devin Booker, man, and how do the Phoenix Suns keep doing this, bro? Like it's always the guard position, man. Like it's a merry-go-round of madness with the Phoenix Suns and the guards. They just find guards everywhere they go. Guards. I mean, it's guard. They just throw out guards and they just go out there and they drop 20 like it's nothing, man.
I'd be surprised if Booker plays, throughout the entire process of summer league. We've seen guys, especially, high ranking shooters, if you will, come out to summer league. They play the first 2 or 3 games. They're like, all right, I don't really need to be out here. I remember seeing that. A few years ago, Chandler Parsons, he came out there, was wetting people. It was like, all right, why are you playing? Klay Thompson, same thing. I think that's going to be the case for Devin Booker. He might play the first 3, maybe even 4 games, but as the summer league in Vegas progresses, you'll probably see him kind of hanging out more on the sidelines and chilling with the other guys that are out there in Vegas, because it's a great time out there. Definitely to get out there, maybe next year, man. 2017 is going to be a loaded draft class. I think the baseline should be out there for Las Vegas summer league.
Well, there you go. We're definitely making our proclamation and our campaign that's what we're going to need to be for this for next year's summer league. I will say this, man. Devin Booker goes out in the next game. He could drop 23. He could just go ahead, halftime, come back out in street clothes and just start signing the autographs. Because, like you said, no reason whatsoever being out there any longer schooling these guys, talking about this is how you shoot the rock. You know what I'm saying? So it'd be very, 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 very interesting. I will say this, the couple of guys definitely want to give some forementions to. Chris Dunn, really impressive with the time that he's already spent. He's definitely someone the Minnesota Timberwolves are very high on. And I got to tell you, Shaw, if he continues to do what he's doing, does the talk about trying to move Rubio become more of a realistic thing? I find it hard to believe that Thibodeau's going to find a way to be able to get minutes for this guy. But if he's playing the way that he's playing, you can't have this many guards for the Minnesota Timberwolves and not moving somebody. They got to be moving some of the players that they've got right now, because some of it is there's some talent there other teams could certainly use, and there's guys that they just need minutes to give themselves an opportunity, a chance to play.
Yeah, Rubio is a guy's name is going to be mentioned in a lot in trade talks, and we'll talk about some other guys when we get to coast as well too. But I don't think free agency is pretty much done, if you will. But the trade market is very much open and will be, and there'll be some downtime for a little while. But especially when we get toward training camp, you'll start to see a lot of rumors ramp back up. But Rubio is definitely a name you need to keep an eye on, because I agree with you. I think Chris Dunn is going to make Rubio pretty expendable, if not by season, by training camp, but definitely by the trade deadline.
Definitely. And so once again, impressive display so far from some of the rookies out there at the NBA Summer League. More importantly, the second year guys putting in that work, certainly taking advantage of the opportunity, getting their reps on, and looking to be people that we're going to have to keep our eye out for once we start talking about NBA previews and what kind of impact that they're going to have for the teams that they're playing for moving forward. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time now to go coast to coast, discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. San Antonio Spurs, they still wheeling and dealing, brother. So, of course, what do? You go and get the big man, Pau Gasol. He is now an official Spur. What does that say about Tim Duncan? And more importantly, do the Spurs now have resupplanted themselves as being one of the top dogs in the Western Conference?
Yeah, they're still one of the top teams out west, and Gasol really just seems to go in and plug into what Duncan would have done on a regular basis. Gasol and Aldridge on the front line, it's not amazing defensively, but definitely from an offensive standpoint, it's going to be really great. Gasol can really pass the ball from that post position, and you're going to find Spurs, Cutter running off him all day long. I think it's great for them. And for Tim Duncan, word is that he's probably going to retire. We'll obviously do a big blowout on our show if that does come to pass. But it does seem like Gasol is coming there to replace Duncan, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, if you will, as Duncan rides off into the sunset.
All right, out in Houston, looks like Daryl Morey and Alexander and company, these guys, they believe in Harden. Harden believes in Houston. Houston hopefully believes that he will eventually get them a championship. They have decided to extend his contract. They realize that the future is with Harden. They are going to keep him for an additional 4 years for some $100+ million extra. Shaw, is this a good move by the Houston Rockets? And more importantly, given all this money that's been floating around for James Harden, was this a good move for Harden?
A little bit of a surprising move for Harden, I think. The Rockets, like I said, you're going to see teams trying to lock up their guys after seeing what happened with KD. If there's a way to extend and give guys an extra year, and with that cap, I think it does change the rules of their contract a little bit, that they can get a little bit higher percentage if they're doing an extension. Then Harden doesn't want to go anywhere. Houston believed in him, gave him a chance, and he's going to go ahead and be faithful to them for at least for the next couple of seasons. I think he has a player option in that final fourth year, if you will, too. So good for Houston, good for James Harden as they solidify their franchise for the next couple upcoming seasons.
All right, now out in Brooklyn threw out a ton of money on restricted free agent Allen Crabbe from the Portland Trailblazers, and all the likelihood and everything was pointing in the direction that Portland Trailblazers really didn't need to actually match this offer, but somehow they do, and the Portland Trailblazers have retained Allen Crabbe on a 4-year deal. With this amount of money, I think it's 90 mil, like 80 something.
75.
Yeah, Shaw, is that a good move for Portland?
Nobody saw that come in per se. You know, once they saw that offer sheet signed, especially with the acquisition of Evan Turner and some of the other moves that they made already, and then seeing like Crabbe was going to be somebody that they're going to keep because he wants to start. So now it becomes an open competition, I think, between he and Turner. And, you know, they're paying Turner $17.5 million a year, if you will. Again, somebody's going to have a really expensive bench player at some point, one way or the other. A little surprised by that move for Portland. Crabbe seemed like he was happy to go to Brooklyn, and where he'd probably be the starting shooting guard, one way or the other. But you know, Portland matches, so now it's a done deal.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked by it. I was somewhat shocked by the fact that Brooklyn actually rolled the dice to actually offer this type of max deal for Allen Crabbe. But given what they've been basically putting on their roster so far in this offseason because of free agency, it made sense. However, if you're the Portland Trailblazers, I just felt like your money could be put better elsewhere. Crabbe, again, a great player, up-and-coming player, but injury-prone. So for all that money and all it's worth, I hope they get every single penny's worth, and it better equal to something like Western Conference Finals, possible NBA championship somewhere within the next 4 years. Finally, out in Portland, especially since they're throwing money around like it's nothing. You know, they're throwing their money around like it's fish. Festus Ezeli, he's decided to go and take his talents up there to the Portland area on a 2-year deal. Good move by the Blazers on getting Festus Ezeli.
They have a very, very crowded front court. They also re-upped with Myers Leonard, I think, for 4 years as well, too, at roughly about $11 million per, I think it was. So that front court is extremely packed with Aminu, Leonard, Ezeli, Plumlee, Ed Davis, Noah Vonleh. All those guys can't get minutes, so you know, that's really is a dearth of guys and talent that you have at that position. But Ezeli specifically, hey, you know, he's a rim protector. He'll go out there and definitely spell some minutes, I think, for Plumlee. But I just don't know how Stotts is going to manage all those guys.
Yeah, man, it's nuts. And you talk about like weighing heavy on how great a coach Terry Stotts are. They're definitely going to push him to the test come this upcoming season, given what they've done this past season, finding themselves playing in the Western Conference semifinals. Finally, Shaw, the Boston Celtics have announced the rights on Jared Sullinger, so Jared Sullinger now is open to the market, so to speak. I think we knew that this was coming.
Yep.
What do we make of this now? What do we do now with Jared Sullinger? I mean, if you're Jared Sullinger, what are you able to do?
Well, I think the market is rough for him, because if they would have made this move earlier, Sullinger might have had a better opportunity to go out there and earn some plus dollars. We'll have to see, if we were talking kind of offline, if he has to do a 1-year rehab deal where he goes somewhere, takes a little bit less money, and really proves himself to the NBA, and okay, next year when all those other free agents come out, where he can go out there and really get some plus dollars. But there are a few situations, you know, wish he could go. I think Toronto is one. They can still use some power forward help. Atlanta is another situation where he could go, and not anywhere he can go and necessarily be a starter, but definitely go somewhere and be productive off the bench. If you think about maybe the Dallas Mavericks, he can maybe go there too. You know, haven't heard anything one way or the other, but those are 3 situations that I think that stand out to me as potential landing spots for Jared Sullinger should he want.
Yeah, man. We've seen Jared Sullinger over the years. You know, we've talked about the good things that he brings to the table when his mind right in playing basketball, and some of the things that obviously have kept him from being the guy that I think certainly would not be in this type of situation. The only thing that we can hope for is that he does have a landing spot, and that we can see him out there playing basketball again. I think he realizes that he's a solid basketball player, but, you know, we often talk about it. You know, you got to maintain the things that most teams are looking at. And one of those things is your ability to be on the basketball court. And certainly his injuries, his inability to maintain his weight is all problematic. And a lot of that is self. It's not on the organization's responsibility. They figure you as a grown man should be able to handle these things, and the team around you should be able to help you handle these things. And hopefully this is a clear reminder that nothing is guaranteed. We talk about the guaranteed contracts, guaranteed money, throw it out there. NFL players complain about those things. You take a look at some of these guys right now, man. They're guys that we talked about a couple of years ago. We don't talk about them any longer because there's so many players who are all opting for an opportunity to play in the NBA. And at any given moment, your number could be up. You may no longer be a relevant player with finding yourself playing on a basketball team, let alone being able to participate in the NBA. So let that be a reminder continue to chase your dreams. But once you get there, don't assume anything has been given to you. Awesome show this week, Shaw. Laying it down like no other, brother. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what a great conversation, too, especially discussing the situation regarding Dwayne Wade. Interesting dilemmas. And we obviously cannot wait to see how this is all going to transpire when the season comes up. Two different teams in two different directions, but clearly the legend that is Dwayne Wade and what he brought to the South Florida area, for this to abruptly end the way that it does, just smacks an air of, high-end drama when the Bulls eventually will play the Miami Heat, and really what that might say, moving forward when it comes to the loyalty of organizations and how they treat legendary players. It doesn't look like the Jeter or Kobe treatment is viable any longer now, even in the NBA.
No, it doesn't. But I got an idea for a couple Christmas Day games. Okay. OKC and Golden State. Christmas Day, maybe that at 5 o'clock, and maybe get Miami, Chicago, that 12 o'clock game. I think there's going to be some high drama when it comes to the Christmas Day and the NBA schedule being released in a few months.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And listen, speaking of those of you guys who are getting yourselves prepped up as we plug in some potential Christmas games, I think it's important that if you're going to watch Christmas games, that you should be properly dressed for the occasion, right? So how would you like to get all of your favorite NBA teams merchandise delivered straight to your doorstep before the Christmas Day games begin? Then you need to check out fanessentials.net. All you do is subscribe, then you pick your team, and every month you get the team's gear shipped right to your door. They find the sports gear so you don't have to. Each fan box comes packed full with some of the most amazing gear. It makes for a great gift idea for any sports fan. Prices start at just $14.99 and $34.99. So you visit fanessentials.net, use the promo code BASELINE at the checkout for 30% off on your first month. Visit fanessentials.net and get all of the essentials you need to get yourself ready for some well played possible NBA Christmas games coming up soon. Awesome show once again, Shaw, man. And, listen, man, as we continue to do things through the summer and getting ourselves geared up, I'm sure there's still going to be some more moves to be made by some of these teams as they're starting to finalize their rosters. But really good things moving forward, bro.
Yeah, a lot of conversation I've had throughout the summer already is like, hey, a lot of people think this has been one of the best free agent summers in recent years, simply because, all the movement that has happened. And as we sign off here, a final note before we go, Miami Heat have matched the offer on Tyler Johnson. So Brooklyn, they lose out on Allen Crabbe, lose out and on Tyler Johnson, which is good news for the Boston Celtics, who have Brooklyn Nets picking next year. But nevertheless, unbelievably, Pat Riley is like, well, bump it. We have money to spend. So Tyler Johnson matches his offer sheet. They match that offer sheet. He goes back to the Miami Heat, and alongside some of the other guys we mentioned a little bit earlier on. So, yeah, offseason continues. A lot more to discuss as the summer progresses, and I can't wait to do it with you, my dude.
Most definitely, man. And we appreciate each and every single one of you again for tuning into the Baseline. For the Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch up with you next time.